Please, yes. Church History 1, Lecture 3. Roman Catholicism, 6th to the 13th centuries. We still have students with us. They didn't leave yet. So we're on page 2 at the bottom. Christianity was forced upon people. Do you believe that?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you serious?
Is it really Christianity?
False
Yes.
Christianity.
Right.
Yeah.
A religious belief system was forced upon people. At gunpoint? Well, at torture chamber point? Yes.
Sword.
Sword point? So the Roman Catholic Church expanded at the point of the sword. I should have gotten this in here. As far as I remember, Constantine, way back in 300s, had this vision where he became a Christian. And this vision involved, as far as I remember, a woman riding a horse with a cross and said, with this symbol or sign, conquer. Does that sound right to you? That's what I remember at least. And so they are out conquering. Now in the Old Testament, the Jews, the nation of Israel, let's say the Jews go and conquer peoples for the Lord, for God's kingdom.
Yeah.
So called, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one huge, probably the biggest danger with applying Old Testament to the New Testament. So we just do it the same way. We just transfer Israel to the church. Oh boy. We Baptists need to get guns.
You missed out yesterday.
I'm kidding. we got another gun lover here. Knew it only took one men's fellowship. He was anti-guns until he got to hold a real gun for his first time in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us held guns since we're 3 years old. This is his first time. He's man.
Yes, I agree.
He used to touch guns before he got sick. He kind of got some illegal activity earlier on in life. So the gospel went to England during the days of the apostles, or soon thereafter. Did you know that? This is kind of a little rabbit trail before the cloud goes on. That's interesting. So the gospel went to England. Apostle Paul, we believe, did that even. There's a continual heritage of Bible faith in Britain in spite of fierce persecutions which lasted until the 1700s. Tertullian, writing around 200 AD, said that Christianity was established in the remote regions of the Roman Empire, including Britannorum and Acessa Romanus Loca, places of the British not approached by the Romans. In Alexandria, at about the same time, Origen celebrated the fact that Christianity was by then firmly at the very ends of the world. Now I wonder if he means Catholic kind of Christianity or not. But the first British historian, Gildas, who wrote in about 564, said that the gospel came to England during the reign of Tiberius Caesar, the emperor to whom the Apostle Paul appealed when he was taken to Rome. Okay, he's talking about it in the past, not in 564.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
That makes sense. Otherwise, that guy lived a long time.
All the tongues were there. All the tongues were there during the...
Yeah. So I believe that the gospel got across the known world, the real world, inhabited world, I should say, including England. England's been around probably since the 2nd century, and maybe even before that. I'm not a great historian. In about 169 AD, King Lucius was converted and baptized and sought to lead his people according to God's will. A Christian named Eleutherius in Rome wrote to him as follows. Someone want to read what he wrote?
You have received, through God's mercy, in the realm of Brittany, the law and faith of Christ. You have with you both the parts of the Scripture, out of them, by God's grace, with the counsel of your realm, take ye a law, and by that law, by God's sufferance, rule your kingdom of Britain.
So that's back in the 2nd century. And then, yeah, there's a brass plaque in the Church of St. Peter's, Cornhill, that states that Lucius established a church in London then. And it wasn't one of these Roman Empire Catholic Church style ones. It might have been similar to ours. But that's interesting. At least we know a church was established in Britain. I assume it's the same Britain that we know about. Before this, England was a pagan land filled with the grossest forms of idolatry, including the practice of human sacrifices. Think about America before we Afro-Europeans discovered it. Way, way, way back. You know, there's a big argument, which I already am comfortable with, and I don't remember the facts, but that Native Americans, Indians, did not initially, weren't the first ones here.
Yeah.
They were here, that's for sure. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Oh, and also I heard that from Pastor Joe, that he talked with Pastor Phillips in the Spelem the other day, and Pastor Phillips told me, we're going to try and get a church started in East Omak. So they're still talking about that. An Indian Native American church. If I was in the Spelem, I'd be thinking the same thing. Okay, going on. So it's filled with all this nasty stuff. Baptist historian Thomas Crosby concluded that infant baptism was not practiced in England during the first 300 years. The true Christian doctrine and form of worship as delivered by the apostles was maintained in England, and the Romish government and ceremonies zealously withstood till the Saxons entered into Britain about the year 448, during which time there was no mention of any baptizing in England but adult persons only. So, again, supporting the true fact that immersion was practiced for many, many, many centuries, even by so-called Roman Catholics. Just so you know. Under the Emperor Diocletian in about 300 AD, the fierce Roman government persecutions reached as far as the Christians in England. Of course, there were books and churches were burned. Many were put to death. Now, here's an interesting part. I just want to include this also. Remember St. Patrick? Famous Patrick? Without reading it, what do most people ascribe his denominational background as?
Catholic. Catholic.
Right.
Catholic, yes. No. There was a whole bunch of information on this. I just took a little bit of it. Who preached in Britain in about the early 5th century, was not a Roman Catholic in doctrine and practice, though he is claimed by Rome as one of her saints. John Christian, a great historian, summarizes the evidence. It can be positively stated that he was not a Roman Catholic, and that he approximated in many things the doctrines of the Baptists. In regard to the form of baptism, Patrick practiced immersion upon a profession of faith. Is that what Catholics practice? No. They practice immersion when you're still an infant. There's no profession of faith. During his life, he is said to have immersed 120 people. That's some serious baptizing. Sounds like a Baptist to me. Though, I suppose a Roman Catholic would baptize a lot of people, little infants. He didn't do that. Now, looking on, this is, it's kind of dry, so I'm trying to put some life into it. You can help me. The Saxons. Well, here's where we Americans have come from. The Saxons lived in the area of northern Germany. Oh yes, Germany! The homeland! I was in Germany once, and I just felt like I was at home. Serious. I'm German. I felt good, yes. Germans are the purest race.
I didn't know his name was Porter.
Yeah. Actually, I have more English.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, after that, the Saxons lived in the area of northern Germany and are first mentioned in history soon after the days of the Apostles. They overcame various other tribes in the area of Germany in the next centuries, and in the 5th and 6th centuries, some of them invaded Britain, joined by other tribes in Germany, the Angles and the Jutes. These were famous kind of polka bands back then.
Right.
People liked a lot. So, where's the Jutes at? I lost that thing. Where's that at? Oh, it's in the first one. By the beginning of the 7th century, the Anglo-Saxons, as they became known, had conquered most of Britain. The Anglo-Saxon language was the forerunner to English. So what? Yeah. During the reign of Charlemagne, Charles the Great, in the 9th century, the Saxons in Germany were forced to accept the Roman Catholic religion. Charlemagne sent armies into the Saxon territory and defeated them. On one occasion, the armies of Charlemagne murdered 4,500 of the principal Saxon men, and they refused to give up their general, Wikipedia. Charlemagne then forced the Saxons to be baptized as Catholics and to keep the Catholic rituals upon pain of death. This type of thing was repeated in many places as the Pope extended his territory at the point of a sword. In the 10th century, Poland was subjugated. About 1000 AD, Norway and Iceland became Catholic, followed by Greenland, Sweden, Denmark, and are you hungry? That was a little short little synopsis of taking over many countries. So Charlemagne did a lot to promote the Roman Catholic Empire. No, we're not done yet. We got some interesting things. It's a little more interesting at the end. I thought I would do that for you. Anybody happy about that?
Amen.
Like interesting things at the end? Go ahead and cheat and look ahead. Okay. Monasticism. What is monasticism? David? Good. Kayla? Great.
I don't know.
This table here, right here.
One of
Monasticism.
the features of Roman.
No, you cannot. No. What she said? One of the
Of
features.
the Middle Ages.
Yes. Dealing with monks.
Monasteries.
Monasteries, asceticism, what's going on? Okay, very good, guys. It began in the 3rd century during the persecutions of the Roman emperors. I need help here. Many fled to the deserts and other remote places in Omak, Okanagan area, in Egypt. And it was there that the practice of asceticism began. Say that with me. Asceticism. Someone's still on us. Paul of Alexandria is said to have been the first Christian hermit. You ever hear of a hermit crab? Right, David? He became a hermit crab.
Herman's hermit.
No, what does a hermit crab do?
They hide.
Hide in their shell.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they went in the sand bank.
Well, but they go find a shell and hide it. They don't have their own trail.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, well, going right along, I do that, of course.
Eastern Washingtonians know that, not the West Coast.
We're Iowonians. Oh, we don't have any type of crabs. We got little critters in the creeks there. The cricks. All right. So Antony was another of these early hermits. He sold his riches and shut himself up. Listen to this. He shut himself up in a cave for 10 years. What was he thinking? What is your problem? Fasting excessively.
And going without sleep. He wasn't thinking a lot.
No, it wasn't. But you try and picture what was going through his mind, if you possibly can. Going without sleep, and otherwise abusing and depriving himself in an attempt to overcome inborn sin and dealing with these evil spirits, as he thought they probably were. And if you actually believe that sin can be overcome, flesh can be overcome through depriving it and beating it, which there's some truth to that, then this person was searching for purity, but really he believed, I think, that this gets him to heaven. It steps to heaven, getting the flesh down, and he's not going to get there where he wants to unless that flesh is down. So I give him big A pluses for effort. A's for effort there. But totally the wrong goal. And that's sad. Just think of someone like this who does this for 10, 20, 30 years of their life. They die, go to hell. Yeah. So the spirit of asceticism, which is kind of what? What's asceticism? Denying the flesh. Deprivation of the flesh. Using of the flesh, really. Okay, this spirit grew rapidly as the churches, so-called, became increasingly worldly and ignorant of the truth. The ascetics were considered the great men and women of God. This is what truly did happen back then. And many made pilgrimages to visit their favorite hermit. And on their walls at home, they had pictures and posters of their favorite hermit. And they had, little albums, My Favorite Hermits.
Yeah.
Tourist attraction.
I missed this sentence guy off. Yeah, tourist attraction. Famous hermit lived here. Cropping. Many made pilgrimage to visit these hermits, thinking that they would thus obtain God's blessing by doing that. Wow. The ascetic life was promoted by many of the church fathers, including Jerome, Basil, Disgusting, and Chrysostom. Someone want to read the rest here?
At first, the ascetics
ascetics dwelt alone, but over time they formed communities.
Hold on a second. Sorry. Hermits? What's the key thing about a hermit? So,
And now they
what is
form
this?
communities.
They're not really hermits then. Like a community of hermits. That's like a jumbo shrimp. Go ahead though.
Pachomius of Egypt is said to have formed the first monastic society. By the time of his death in the middle of the 4th century, there were many monasteries, 300 monks, and 27,000 nuns.
Yeah, so a monk is the male version of a hermit, I believe, and a nun is a female version. Then they have people over them called Hey Abbot! What was that all
I
about?
thought that was a hat. That's what a hat.
Oh, yeah.
Dragons is
Yeah. I always thought I was young, but I'm starting to fit into another category.
You know who haven't
I
been
know
so
why
far.
they say
I think I've got a few people left that are in my category. So by the beginning of the 5th century, so it grew fast. There were 50,000 monks and many more nuns. The head of the community was called the abbot or father, and he was obeyed in all matters. I'm the head hermit. The practice of asceticism grew ever more intense and strange. Well, here was some strange things they did. And David, don't do these things. They whipped themselves, deprived themselves of sleep for long periods, fasted for extremely long periods, partook of the most inedible food, took vows of silence, stood for days without sitting down, didn't bathe, David.
That helped them.
David, they kept hoods drawn over their faces, sat on top of pillars for months at a time. Now, I've often thought of doing that. What does that do for you?
How big of a pillar?
Just help develop a balance.
Well, CNN is around. I wouldn't be doing that. Okay, and then they withdrew from all normal human relationships, taking vows to isolate themselves from their loved ones for the rest of their lives. They submitted themselves to endless vain rituals. Celibacy was exalted over marriage. The female ascetics, the nuns, were said to be married to Christ, and they took their vow of celibacy. And have you ever known someone who went into the nunnery? Yeah. There's still some, I've met, I just can't remember, there are a few that have gone into the nunnery. What would drive someone to do that? It's not like a cannery, it's not like an assembly line type thing. Eventually all the monasteries came under the control of the Pope. Okay, so all these little hermit crabs getting together, they form the communities, they're getting bigger, so the Pope, it's kind of related to Catholicism, they said, hey, we're going to be in charge of all you guys. Plus they were looked at as the leaders in Christianity because of their asceticism and purity. So it was an interesting combination there. At first the monasteries were overseen by the bishops of each area, but when the Pope took all authority unto himself, they came under the control of Rome. All monasteries had to be authorized by Rome and had to submit to the rules drawn up by Rome. There's a story on monasticism. With under 10 minutes to go, let's say, how about under 7 minutes to go? Do you like that better? This is interesting here. So of all that you've read, this might be the most interesting. And actually sick. Have you ever heard that the popes of yesteryear were very wicked and immoral? Yeah. This doesn't go into it very much. I've read some accounts that really go into it. I don't think that's what we want to do. Well, the popes, they had mistresses that were 15 years old. They were guilty of incest and sexual perversions of every sort. They had innumerable illegitimate children and were murdered. Well, the popes actually were murdered in the very act of adultery by? Yeah. That might not be a good thing. You might want to think that one out. Murdering the Pope, but I don't blame him. That might get you a little time in jail. Have you ever seen the Pope on TV when he goes out in public? Does he have some security? What's the neat little thing he drives in?
Popemobile.
Yeah, it's a well, there's a word they say, but it's a souped up Mercedes that has this big bulletproof little box. It's a glass box. It goes like this. Okay. You okay? Oh, I thought you were leaving. The following are just a few of the countless examples that could be given of the immorality of folly of the popes. I need some help here. I'll read the first one. Pope Sergius III had 2 of his predecessors put to death and fathered an illegitimate son. Okay. I mean, no one's perfect. The next one.
Pope John XII is described by the Catholic Encyclopedia as, of course, the moral man whose life was such that the Lateran was spoken of as a brothel. The Lateran being the palace that Emperor Constantine donated to the Bishop of Rome.
Brothel? Wow. Now we have some government officials, senators and whatnot that have gotten into some trouble. But nothing like what these popes were getting into. Do you think that is common amongst people that make it to the top
Oh, yeah.
of the government?
Definitely.
Who had this happen just recently? Oh, we had a famous golf star, Tiger Woods. I can figure that. Really, all of them that are really famous, super famous, super rich, I think that's probably going on, more than likely. Pretty common. John the 23rd made his brother's wife his mistress, and he has many other immoral relations with women. He frequently consulted a magician named Adrenaline. The Catholic he was into energy drinks. The Catholic Encyclopedia admits he was utterly worldly minded, ambitious, crafty, unscrupulous, and immoral. And he was Pope of the universe, you know. He was convicted by the Council of Constance of some 55 crimes, including the murder of his predecessor, yikes, Pope Alexander V, rape and sodomy and incest, to name a few. He was deposed from the papacy but retained a position as a cardinal, and later became dean of the Sacred College in Dallas. Pope Sixtus, who wants to, no, I'll read that one. Then something new to Pope Innocent. Pope Sixtus IV erected a house of prostitution in Rome. The inmates of which, according to Dr. Chortin, paid His Holiness a weekly tax, which amounted sometimes to 20,000, whatever those are, a year. Before he assumed the papacy, Pope Pius II wrote pornographic literature for a living. Even the Catholic Encyclopedia admits that he freely indulged in his passions. He had 2 illegitimate children. Someone read the next one.
Pope Innocent had at least 2 illegitimate children that he raised to positions of authority and wealth in the Catholic Church. He gained the papacy through bribery. He created new ecclesiastical offices and sold them to the highest bidder.
Hey! Sounds like what happened in Chicago. That guy's still in the news. Yeah, who's that guy?
He's got hair like I can't remember.
Wash. Glavoyevich.
Yeah.
Whatever his name is. The hair guy.
Yeah.
Glavoyevich, yeah. He ought to have his own reality sitcom TV show. Pretty good. He's pretty good. I wouldn't watch it. Pope Alexander VI was a vile man before he bribed or otherwise his way to the papacy. He had at least 4 illegitimate children, a requirement for the papacy, by the way. And he made them rich through appointments after he was pope. He made his son, Cesare Borgia, a cardinal when he was only, hey David, 18 years old and he's a cardinal. That's where the popes come from, College of Cardinals. And Cesare was an immoral and violent man who had his brother put to death, as well as his sister Lucretia, as a husband. Alexander held unspeakable orgies in his palace and kept mistresses who were married women. He died of appropriate. Pope Julius II was another of the drunken, immoral popes in the Dark Ages. He had immoral relations with women that produced at least 3 illegitimate children, and it said that he had homosexual relations as well. He gained the papacy through bribes. Well, that's just to name a few. When Luther visited Rome in the late 1400s, this is interesting. He found that it was filled with immorality and blasphemy. The priests were accustomed to making a mockery of the Mass. Now listen to this. And tell me what you think of this. There's multiple opinions you can have. So, Luther observes this. They boasted to him how that instead of saying hoc est nuum corpus, the words which proclaim the changing of the bread into Christ, they said panis est et panis manibus, which means bread thou art and bread thou wilt remain. And then they laughed within themselves as the people, who didn't understand Latin, bowed themselves to the uplifted host. So what do you think about these guys who were making a mockery of it, who didn't believe it was really Jesus Christ, and said, bread thou art, bread thou shalt remain.
Sound like the mafia or something.
Okay, sounds like mafia. All right. Here's a thought. That wasn't my thought thing, but that's okay. Were they right to do that? Were they wrong? What position might you take?
They were pretty much deceiving the people in what they were doing and laughing at the people for their worship of what they thought was real, but when they themselves knew the truth, that it really wasn't Jesus Christ and of the way for
Yeah. So you could almost give them credit for coming to the truth that it's not really Jesus, but I think they're doubly as bad.
Yeah.
Because they don't believe Jesus Christ is God and they don't have any fear of Him.
Right.
They're actually knowingly leading people astray and laughing about it,
Right.
which is even worse. Okay, going on at the bottom of 4, we're almost done! Instead of a city of prayers and alms, of contrite hearts and holy lives, Rome was full of mockery, or mocking hypocrisy, defiant skepticism, jeering impiety, and shameless revelry. And he said, if there be a hell, Rome is built over it. Oh, he knew there was a hell, I would assume. All right, in closing, I have heard way back in the 60s they called it the Vatican's billions.
Yeah.
Now I think it's the Vatican's trillions. They are rich. I was told through these comics I read, what's the fellow's name? That it's these Christian comics that are out there, a little chick tract book out, they're very interesting, very controversial. Alberto, the Catholic priest that got out and got saved apparently and wrote a lot of information on it, that they have many, many levels below the Vatican, one of the main buildings of the Vatican, filled with gold.
Oh, sure.
Okay. But if that was the case, I'd let's go rob it. All these old cardinals go, hey, get out of here!
They have the
You're
Swiss
better
card.
than Americans.
Was that the Swiss card?
They have their own.
The wonderful thing is what God
What?
says about
I'm not kidding. What about it? The gold?
Go rob it.
Oh, no, don't go rob it. I'm thinking someone might be thinking that, not you guys. Unless you're thinking about it. Wow. Yeah. The Roman Catholic Church of the Dark Ages was incredibly wealthy. Following are some of the sources of this wealth. So how did they get the wealth? Anyways, here's one, the Papal States. From the time of Pope Stephen III in the 8th century, the popes ruled over a large portion of Italy called the Papal States. These were taken by force of arms by Emperor Pepin and given to the Pope. He derived great wealth in this manner until 1860. That's recent. When the Kingdom of Italy was formed and the Pope was left only with Rome. Later, all he had was Vatican City. It's a 1 mile square place. So they got it from taking over these countries, or at least Italy. Tithes. So when we give our tithes and offerings, where does it go?
Here.
It goes to Dallas, where it is. It goes to my bank account? No?
To this church.
Okay, yeah. It goes in the treasury bag, and then the treasurer counts it up carefully. It's already been counted, but just verifies things, and then puts it in the bank. Our bank, Faithful Baptist Church. Do we have to give money to the denominational headquarters?
What?
Yeah. We're non-denoms, believe it or not. We're one of those items. Back to reality. So tithes. Rome taught that it was the fitting recipient of the tithe, and great riches flowed into its coffers in this manner from Catholic lands. 1376, the British Parliament noted that the taxes paid in England to Rome amounted to 5 times as much as those levied by the king for just normal taxes.
Wow.
So I don't know if it works this way today, but back then, countries would pay tax or tithes, their share of the. Let me take this backwards. So if you're a Catholic in a church building or a little Catholic church, you give money. I would assume a certain portion of that's got to go to Rome.
Oh,
I don't know if it's 10% of what they get or how that works, but just think of the money that would be coming in. Someone help me out on this doctrine of purgatory. You want to read about half of that?
The doctrine of purgatory, one of the greatest sources of Rome's wealth is the doctrine of purgatory. Rome teaches their citizens that souls of Christians do not go directly to heaven, but go instead to purgatory and are punished for an undetermined time until their sins were sufficiently expunged. Rome's good news is that these souls can be assisted through the masses purchased by their living loved ones. I'm told billions of dollars have been paid to Rome with the hope that the loved ones might escape the horrors of purgatory.
Wow. So, what are these called when they pay money to bring the captives free?
Indulgence.
It's right there. Indulgences, the next word. The indulgences were promised that the Pope would forgive sins of the living or assist the dead in purgatory, and they were sold to the pitiful and blind people. Massive amounts of money were raised by this means for the papacy beginning in the 12th century. What an ingenious scheme. The Roman Catholic Church still teaches the doctrine of indulgences. They were recently affirmed by Pope John Paul II. So if you had family members that were Catholics that went on and you said, yeah, they're probably in purgatory, would you be motivated to pay some money to, if you believe this, to spring them out sooner? If they told you, hey, just a couple $100 a month might do it.
If I believe that.
Yeah, if you believed it. Yeah, if you believed it. Now, any Catholics, former Catholics here, believe that sort of thing and even do it? You were pretty young, maybe. No? Oh, okay. Did you practice that at all?
Yeah. Even my mom still does today. It's just, I guess I can say this. Just recently, when Jared and Christy got married, my mom thought it was a good idea to go to her priest and have paid to have a mass said in honor of Jared and Krista to bless their marriage.
Wow. So how much does this priest charge for that sort of
I
thing?
shouldn't say. But I'm sure it was a good amount.
What would you say? How much? What? What's it going? 25, 50, 100, 500? 500?
About 150, 20.
Really? Wow. Oh, okay. Yeah, that is sad. Rome gained massive wealth through, we're going to hear about this next week, I think. We'll have a DVD on the Inquisition and the Crusades. She had the power to confiscate all of the wealth and possessions of her victims, which would be whole countries. Anyone could be condemned to the Inquisition and they had no legal recourse whatsoever. Tell me, does anyone have, yeah, you do. Let me just see this, our course schedule. We have errors. Okay. So we'll deal, in Baptist, I think we'll deal with some persecutions in there. Definitely, and it's really sad, these persecutions, but we need to go over that so you understand what our forefathers went through to remain pure and right and stick by the truth. It's not to glamorize or just make it wow, provocative. It's to have you remember that they were willing to go through all that, and what are you willing to go through? A little inconvenience, a little going against a popular opinion. So in closing, and this I'm trying to do this on all these, if not more things, but key points. And this helps me for study guides too. It'll make it a lot easier. Oh, I will. Typically takes 2 hours to put together a study guide. Then to put together a test is 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So this will cut it down some. So key points, this is where a study guide might come from. Well, it's probably going to come from this. I haven't totally figured all this out. But the study guide you get will be what you need to know for a test. But just in case you want to get ahead of the game, like the good, smart students would do,
Amen.
that have apps on their phones and all these things, they might want to actually, hey, I'm going to kind of keep up with things. What are these key things that we're supposed to know? Someone read the first one, and we'll be taking a break. We'll get done here.
The 6th to 15th centuries were called the Devil's Millennium and the Dark Ages by Baptists, but the Catholics referred to that period as the Golden Age.
Okay. Next one.
When does
Because that's really what they were.
During this age, Rome gained enormous power, mostly through the power of politics.
Right. Next one, someone.
During this age, Rome gained, I just read this. The bull Unum Sanctum by Pope Boniface the Fourth, the Eighth, I'm sorry, 1302, stated that no one could be saved apart from the Holy Roman Catholic Church.
Someone else?
The Holy Roman Empire was composed of many small independent kingdoms that were ruled over by an emperor. It was an alliance of church and state. Everyone within the empire was forced to be Catholic, beginning from their baptism in infancy.
Wow. Next one.
Continuation of the old Roman Empire is seen in Daniel chapter 2. In its early sooners, what the Roman Catholic Church has been doing over the past 1,500 years.
Yes. Short one for the next one, whoever jumps at it.
St. Patrick was undoubtedly a Baptist.
All right, you got it. Shortest verse in the Bible. During the reign of Charlemagne, Charles the Great, in the 10th century, much of Europe was conquered for the popes. I'm taking what I would call key things out, making it simple for you. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice?
Amen.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice.
Monasticism, asceticism, a life of denying the body any pleasures, developed in the 3rd century and spread over the world. Monkeys, nuns, abbots, and monasteries grew out of it. The Pope took control over all these societies, and these societies were looked at by Catholics as the ultimate in Christianity. Someone else?
Most of the popes of this time period were known for gross immorality of the vilest sort.
Wow. And lastly, the Vatican probably has trillions of dollars today. They amassed this enormous wealth through what? We learned the taking of papal states, through the tithes across the world, through indulgences, and through the Inquisition and the Crusades. Very, very good class. Take a good long break. This is a longer one. Don't think it's always going to be this long. When you see 5 pages, it's going to be a while.